Welcome to another Cattle Call. It is Cattle Call for a new week. It's original production of the Nebraska Rural Radio Association. And this production, of course, brought to you by Wolf Auto, small town strong. Check out their website, wolfauto.com. Thank you so much, Wolf Auto, for sponsoring, again, today's Cattle Call. Again, it's Brad Kooima, Kooima and Varilek there at Sioux Center, Iowa, as we break down this week's cattle markets. Before we do that, let's go back to last week here just very quickly and kind of recap where we ended last week. And again, a feeling of a softer market last week. Are the tops in? Is the honeymoon over? What do you think of where we're at in the cattle market these days?
Chad, thanks for having me on. And I do feel like we kind of limped into the finish of last week to try to answer your question from a cash standpoint. Like in the north here, we are solidly now discounted to the south. And I've mentioned before on your program that a characteristic of a bull market is that the north is higher than the south. Now, obviously, there's a macro fundamental. I mean, with the border being closed, the numbers are extremely tight. It's taken this long finally for Texas to get above us, even though the numbers there are extremely short, Chad. But here, it feels like we've lost a little bit of our leverage, and I don't want to oversay it or overreact. It's not like, we've got 1,800-pound cattle standing around like sometimes we do this time of year with these long-fed, farmer-fed calves. But it is not like it was 2 months ago either. For the spring and summer, we were pulled forward here in the north. We had all kinds of leverage. We had tight numbers, and we were so current that if we didn't like the way the bids were, we could easily pass a week and see what happens. Now I'm starting to hear more of those stories, a little bit of which is a little disconcerting. The guy goes, yeah, I could have had 245 and I still got these things. And now they're, the market is going to be lower this week here in the north. It sure feels like they're getting some cattle bought at 365 in the meat, which is the equivalent of maybe only 230. I hope it's not that bad, but last week it was 237 on Thursday, 236, at least for me on Friday. So we didn't finish with a real robust tone. I had a cattle on feed report on Friday afternoon. That was largely neutral, little bit friendly. Placements a little disappointing on the marketing number, but not dramatically so. And then we had, the screwworm bomb that we had to react with here on Monday morning. So there's been plenty of action this week so far. Fasten your seatbelt, Chad.
Yeah, all right. I got it fastened and it's strapped down. So here we go. Now, you bring up the cattle on feed report. We did have a listener question that actually pertains to that. So let's get to that right now. The question from the cattle on feed report: does the lower marketing paired with the lower than expected cattle on feed number throw kind of a wrench in this idea that processors are backing up cattle? And then you get the cattle on feed report and the carcass weights, and they're going up. So what does this all mean when you put it all together? What do you think of that?
It's an interesting question because it is somewhat thoughtful, although I'm not going to argue with the questioner here, but his data is a little off. The carcass weights are not flat week over week. The steer and heifer carcass fed cattle slaughter, that weights that I watch every Thursday, were up 6 pounds a week on week, and I believe we're 21 pounds over a year ago. So that trend is very, very obvious, not very seasonally normal too. And look around. The weather's perfect. We got long-fed calves. Replacement feeder cattle are high priced. Feed is cheap. You've got all you've got a recipe for what's happening here. The marketing number was 86%. The guess was 87.2 was the average guess. So the marketings were less than what it was expected, which would, I believe, actually, unfortunately, fits the narrative that we're not selling quite as many cattle as we thought. So and they've seen the average weights climb. So, yeah, I think we are backing a few cattle up. Again, like I said a couple of sentences ago, I don't think it's a terrifying situation, but it's not like it was. The South, on the other hand, has absolutely consciously made these cattle bigger. I mean, of course, they're talking about 80% cattle on feed, to try to supply the chain at all. Those cattle are way, their carcass weights in some cases in Texas are more than 40 pounds over a year ago. 40 carcass pounds. So that's very real. Now, I think that's going to be the rub of the green for a while, Chad. As we're going through these tight numbers, that's what the Packers going to try to do. Slaughter levels have been very poor. I don't think we're killing the available supply for the last while. So is Brad a little negative? Yeah, he is for short term. I don't think it'll last forever. I think we get on the other side of maybe Thanksgiving. I think you're going to see some retention. There should be a few less yearlings for that first quarter. Should be less heifers, particularly. So I do remain generally optimistic, but just in the short term, it feels like maybe we got a little pause here for a moment.
All right. Let's talk about, you mentioned it as well in your comments, the news that New World screwworm is within 70 miles of the U.S. border now. And there was which is bad enough. I mean, that's enough to make the market react, I would say. But then there was this idea thrown out there by Ag Secretary Brooke Rollins on some sort of a program for heifer retention to try and rebuild the herd here in the United States. I don't think we know many details on that or what that would look like, but what's your initial reaction just to a program like that, just at its face value, what we know now?
I should have looked it up. Do you remember there was an interview that Bobby Knight did one time, and he said, of all the stupid ideas or stupid questions you've ever asked me, this one is something like that, Of all the bad ideas government could have, this would rank right up there at the top of the pile for me. I love the way you set up the question of not many details or, the implication. So let me rewind just a little bit. So they had a positive case of the screwworm infested in a 600-pound calf that came on a load of 100 cattle that were moved from the deep south area of Mexico, known to have the screwworm. Okay. Mm-hmm. Somebody's brilliant idea is to haul it 68 miles from the South Dakota border. And one of them had an open wound, and one of that calf tested to have positive. Does that mean that there are flies 70 miles away from the border? I don't think so.
Okay. But
you had an infected animal that they treated. So the storytelling goes on. So anyway, Secretary Rollins was making all these comments how we're going to keep everybody safe, and they make it sound like this is the biggest crisis ever. I struggle even with that whole thing. We got it eradicated in the 60s. You don't think that we've got better technology? We've got a product called Ivermectin that we could treat this disease a little better than we could in 1966. I think we could. But anyway, I digress. So then her comments were, the administration is considering the need to incentivize the rancher to rebuild his cow herd to ensure the safety and the longevity of beef production in the United States. Okay, incentivize the rancher. The rancher and the feeder, and I'm a feeder, has never made this kind of money, ever. You're going to incentivize him at a time when the prices are record high? I mean, it's absurd. Let the market do the market's job. The market will fix that. The market will, if guy wants to, if it rained, which it didn't in Montana this year, if he's got grass, he's going to save some heifers because he's liquidated his cow herd for various reasons over the last 5 years. So what the market reaction was like, holy cow, they're going to pay me to save a heifer? No details. I don't know how you'd possibly administer that you proved that you actually bred a heifer, first of all. So all of a sudden we shot up the feeder cattle 9.25 limit, which is way too big a limit, because we thought, well, we're going to pull into that available supply of cattle, right? We're going to breed some of those heifers that would have gone to a feedlot. The live cattle futures in the short term shot higher too on that same idea that less heifers go into a feed yard to be going to fed cattle. Now, what is that? If that would happen, and I think they're gonna walk that back. But if it would happen, you can guarantee that down the road you'll completely wreck the market. This is a terrible idea. Let's pay somebody to overproduce then, so that in 2.5 years we can wreck the market entirely. I hope that cooler heads prevail, but that's been in our marketplace. I think that boosted the market. Without that, we'd have had a tougher week, and we're acting like it today. I mean, we're over $4 lower on feeder cattle futures today. So it feels to me like we're getting over that idea, which was, in my opinion, a terrible idea. So.
Yeah. Well, if you play the what if game and how would it play out, you brought up the good point about administration. How would you actually go about doing this? But in the meantime, I got to think that prices are going to go up. Food prices for the consumer, it's going to be expensive for the government to do this. I mean, we'll see what happens if they walk it back all the way. But at least initially, that's where we're at. We any other thoughts on that quickly?
Well, I was going to be a little bit off topic, but you're talking about food prices. I did notice that President Trump is going to visit Brazil next week, and there's a component there. We've got an 86% tariff on meat coming out of Brazil. I'm not sure what Brazil has to do to lower that, but that would be a thought. I mean, if he's serious about trying to lower the price of beef for the consumer, hamburger has gone nuts because you don't get any grinding meat out of there. So I don't know, stay tuned. We'll see. There might be a little bit of shift in policy there, I'm guessing, but that I don't think it's too big of a reach to think maybe something might come out of that.
Yeah, more to come on that. We'll definitely keep an eye on that. Just with the time that we have left, Brad, thoughts for this week's cash cattle trade? Like you said, we had some sales in the north at 365. Looks like some initial asking prices, 242 to 244 in the south. What do you make of kind of the feeling of the market this week?
I think we're going to, unfortunately, I think we're going to widen the spread between north and south. Maybe the South will hold steady at that 240 level because of extremely tight supplies, maybe. But it sure feels like the North is going to be lower. I hope it's 235-ish, but I'm worried it might even be a little bit worse than that. So let's limp into lower. Let's try to get current, guys. Still a big price. I mean, the first time you got bid 235, you couldn't believe it, right? So let's try to get ourselves back on a little better footing from a leverage standpoint and try to stay current. But it feels to me like it's going to be a bit softer here in the North.
All right, very good. And again, just welcome the folks to give you a call and have some conversations about what's going on, right?
Absolutely. You can check our website out, but we'd prefer you call. We got 3 other brokers here, 712-722-0023, and we'd be glad to try to talk to you.
All right, very good. Brad, I appreciate the conversation. Thank you so much. Brad Kooima, and Varilek at Sioux Center, Iowa, the expert on today's Cattle Call program. And again, be sure you hit that subscribe button and do submit a comment. If you have a question you'd like us to talk a little bit about, kind of break down, put that in the comments below, and we'll put that in next week's Cattle Call. Thanks for joining us on this week's Cattle Call. We'll look forward to you next week.